So in this particular problem called as plus minus, a very simple problem. Given a list of elements, you need to find out how many of these elements are positive, meaning what fraction of the elements are positive, what fraction of the elements are negative, and what fraction of the elements are zeros. Right? Now you can just observe here, out of 5 elements, there are 2 positive elements. Right? 2 out of total number of elements is 5. 2 out of 5 is 0.4. Okay. Then again there are 2 elements which are negative, right? So 2 out of 5 is 0.4, right? And then there is one element which is 0, so 0.2. Okay, fraction of the elements are 0, right? So now the elements can be anything between minus 100 to plus 100, and the size of the array or the list of elements can be 100. Now this is a very simple problem, especially if you're working on C or C++. The main objective to look out here is the type conversion, right? Okay, let's try to do this problem in 2 different ways. One, in a very easy way, where every time you scan the element, you check out if it is greater than 0 or less than 0 or it is equal to 0. And then we'll also try to solve the same problem using count underscore if of C++ algorithm. Let's move into that. So first thing will be like the number of elements. The number of elements will be read as n, and once we read the number of elements, the next thing what we need to do is we need to read the elements into an array. So first we'll try to create an array of n elements, right? And we'll ask the user to enter the elements, right? Now since there are n elements, I do require a for loop, and then I'll try to read with the help of cn array of I. Right? So reading task is done. So after that, to keep track of number of positives, I'll just use a variable called as positive count, which is initially set to 0. The same way I'll also have a negative count, which will again be set to 0, right? I'll say 0 count, right? 0 count will also be set to 0. Okay. Now after this, what I'll try to do is I'll try to run through the loop starting from first element to the last element. Now every time I access the element, okay, I'll try to check out if this element, right, like array of I, is it greater than 0? If it is greater than 0, I will try to increment the positive count, right? Positive count variable will be incremented by 1. Else, if the element is less than 0, I will increment negative count. Okay, if it is neither positive, it is neither negative, I know it is 0, so I'll try to increment 0 count. So we have basically a calculated number of positives, number of negatives, and number of zeros, right? Now please do remember, everything whatever we have used till now is integers. Now we need to count the fraction, like what fraction of elements were positive, what fraction of elements were negative, and what fraction of element was 0. So for this, if you just try to write positive count divided by n, this should give me the fraction. But please do remember, since the numerator and the denominator both are integers, like for example, let us say, okay, like example what was given in HackerRank, uh, we had 110 minus 1 minus 1. There were 2 positives out of 5. 2 divided by 5 will not give you 0.4, it will give you 0, right? If you want to get 0.4, then you have to have either the numerator as floating point value or the denominator as the floating point value. So for that, I'll try to use a typecasting out here. Since it is C++, I can use a function style typecasting, right? So this is my positives, fraction of positives, okay, and then I can give a space, right? Or no, I think we require a new line out there. Fine, we'll just quickly see that, do we require a new line between every output? Yes, we do require a new line. Okay, so I'll try to put a new line there, and then the same way I'd like to print the fraction of negatives and fraction of zeros, negative count and the zero count. Okay, so I can just run this program. Only IO stream is required. I don't require algorithm or string to run this particular code. Right, 5 elements. I'll just write 1, 1, 0, -1 and -1. I should get 0.4, 0.4 and 0.2. Yes, I got the output. Right. So if you want, you can take this particular code and even submit on the hacker rank out there. So I can just take this entire thing, but I need to comment that 𝐶out what I'm using in line number 9, line number 13. Right. I'll just go down here. I need to select C++ because I've used 𝐶out statements. Otherwise, the logic is same. Either use C or C++, the logic remains the same. Fine. I'm just commenting this and then submitting it. First run with the sample test cases. And once the sample test cases are done, you can just run the all the test cases out here. So the important point out here is the typecasting. If you forget to do a typecasting, then you will not get the correct output. You will always get 0, 0, 0. Right? Okay. This is a normal way in which you have done it. Now I'd like to do the same thing using the concept of count underscore if. So I'd like to count the positives with the help of count underscore if. Right? I'll be passing the beginning of the array, begin of array, okay, end of array. Clear? Remember the begin and end is C++11 construct. Right? Begin function and the end function is C++11 construct. Okay. Right. Now I need to pass on the predicate function which will count the positives. So here I can just use a lambda code out here. I'll be passing a number, right? And then if the number is positive, return number is greater than 0. So what this code does is, if the number is greater than 0, it returns true, otherwise return false. Right? Okay. Now this will give me the count of positives, and the same way this will give me the count of negatives, wherein I just need to write less than here. And to count zeros, I don't need to use even count underscore if. I can just use count. Count is sufficient for me, right? Count is sufficient here. The first two argument remains the same. The third argument I can just pass on the 0 value, because I'm searching for a particular value. And but there it is not a particular value, it's a values which satisfy some kind of conditions. So once if it is done, I can remove this part I can remove, and the remaining part remains the same. So again, I'd like to run this particular code and then verify it here, and then once I verify it here, I'll try to resubmit it in HackerRank. And here you do require algorithm, because you're using count underscore if, and we are using this begin and end function, which is a C++11 construct. So in HackerRank, you have to select C++11 or above. After 11, we do have something called as C++14. The problem what we face out here is when you use a traditional array, okay, and that too wherein you're specifying the size of an array at the runtime, like for example, int array of n, right? Then we cannot use the begin and end function. So if you want to overcome this, you can just use vector of int, and then use not a square bracket, parenthesis. And since we're using a vector out here, just try to use vector. Right? Done. So let us try to compile this particular code. This should work. Remember, if you had used a fixed size array, it should have worked. But if you're using a variable length array, then okay, we cannot use the begin and end function.
Okay.
Compilation done. Let me try to run this. So 5 elements, 1, 0, 0, 1, -1. Or let us say I'll not keep any negative values this time. So I have 60% or 0.6 fraction as positive, and 0.4 fraction as zeros, and negatives as Okay, 0, right? Okay, now I'd like to take this and then submit in HackerRank, and I'll just comment it here only, right? So I'll take this particular code, go down here. This was the previous code what we have done. So I'd like to please do remember, please do select C++ 14, right? And then paste your code here and then run the sample test case. And then submit it, right? See, we have used lambda, we have used count underscore if, okay, and as well as the count algorithm.